It is around that time we're expecting to see some chatter about the new commanders coming to Rise of Kingdoms. Arthur Pendragon has been in the game, not for a while, but he's been in the game for a little bit now, and soon we're going to see some leaks for new commanders. Soon there are going to be more commanders in the game. So today, I'm going to be giving my predictions about what I think the next commanders are. What troop type will they be? What skills will they have? Do I think they'll be meta? When do I think they'll release? Everything I am going to predict about these commanders. So if you're interested in the upcoming commanders to Rise of Kingdoms, when I personally think they might come, what I think they'll do, and which troop type they may be, you want to stick around to the end of the video. Now, let's start off by quickly giving a disclaimer. Everything today, and I always do this for all my prediction videos, everything is a prediction. It's just that. I can't guarantee anything I say comes to the game. For all I know, the troop type I get could even be completely wrong, since at the end of the day, it's up to Lilith, whatever commander they want to release. They could go and for some reason release more calves if they did so choose, but when I make a prediction, I want to try and go off previous commander releases and what a troop type generally needs. We can also make predictions of commander cycles, we can make predictions of the time that commanders usually have in between release. Stuff like that really does help when it comes to these predictions, so I'm trying to make an educated guess, but at the end of the day, it is mostly speculation. Sometimes I've been right. I got some of Arthur Pendragon's kit right. I didn't guess the combo damage. I did get the AoE and the fact that he would be meta and he'd be powerful. I got a very good amount of Zhu Lang's kit right when I predicted. Shajar, I got part of it right. There's some stuff you can predict by looking at commanders. It's just kind of, you can't fully guarantee it. I don't think I'm going to get a 100% prediction. The only time I ever did that with Zhu Lang, it was like a 80 and 90% prediction. But that was a complete fluke. So generally, my predictions are somewhat accurate to what we'll get, but sometimes they're completely wrong. I mean, I definitely did not predict the Infantry release of Liu Che. That was not on my list at all. Possibly we could see something similar for the commander that comes up, but we just don't know. So now with that out of the way, let's just start off with the troop type. It's most likely going to be infantry. Our normal commander release cycle is cavalry, infantry, archers, leadership / ranged. Cavalry, infantry, archers, leadership, range. That's normally the cycle. We just had cavalry. Infantry are most likely what I would expect to be next. Now that kind of brings me on to what do I think the infantry commander is going to be like. And I don't really have a crazy prediction for this, because infantry are in a really good position right now. If I were to guess, we're probably going to get another single target commander. The reason I say that, infantry have a lot of AoE already. CPO, Ragnar, and Liu Che are all meta AoE beasts in the current meta at least. They're completely game-changing. They're super powerful. They're up there with some of the best commanders in the game, and they deal some of the most damage. So I don't see the reason to give infantry more AoE meta commanders. I don't think that's going to make sense for A, the open field, like the position of it and the way the health of the field would work, and B, I don't think it's needed for infantry. I mean, if they added another smite meta commander that just replaces William, I don't see that as being a very good choice, and I think it's just going to harm infantry in the future more than it would, or at least harm infantry right now, since a lot of people expertise William, more than it would really benefit them. Or it's just going to make Liu Che go out of the meta, which doesn't make sense because he's not that old, or it's going to make you want to run 3 infantry marches, but there isn't really a good 3rd infantry march. So I think right now, we're probably going to see another single target commander, who's either going to be smite damage, and I actually don't think smite damage is my main prediction this time. I feel like there's a chance this could be a single target skill damage commander, or a dual commander. A commander that has the ability to be a single target smite commander, or a single target direct damage commander. And the reason I say that, CPO is getting a little bit older. Ragnar is a brand new, really meta commander. They probably want to capitalize on Ragnar, and they definitely want to have a good bit of capitalization on the smite damage meta. So there's a chance we see a dual commander. We've had 2 back-to-back at this point. For archers, we had Shajar. She can deal both direct damage and also mighty heal factor, while we've also had Arthur Pendragon, who can deal the combo damage attacks and also direct damage factor. So I think infantry most likely we'll get something similar, where this commander's either a really good, possibly secondary to Ragnar, or a really good primary with Liu Che. I think that's a very high possibility. I think William might still be a little bit better than this commander, whoever they may be, and it's just going to come down to the fact that the reason that would be the case is because William is a bit more specialized, this commander, a bit more open doors, a bit more broad, but I think they will outpower CPO. Maybe I will renege my prediction that it won't be any AoE. The reason I say that is possibly we could see an AoE with the dual effect there. Now, it could mean that there is an AoE Smite March that's just completely meta, and it could be ridiculous. But I think that there's a possibility we just see smite damage or just see skill damage in a dual way as a single target commander who's just pump load of stats and works really well with Ragnar. I think that's very possible. I think the commander would probably be relatively powerful and it would kind of make sense. The damage factor would definitely be at a meta level if I were to guess. For smite damage, it'd be close to William Wallace, probably a little bit more. The stats might be a little bit less than William. I think that would make sense. But the smite damage would be most likely 2600 plus. If it was skill damage, I don't know. We haven't seen a single target skill damage in a very long time for infantry. So I'd say 2500 to 2600 as well probably is what I would predict as a single target damage factor for the commander. Other than the dual effect and the fact that they're probably going to be a good primary or secondary to Ragnar or a good primary and secondary to Little Chair or both, I think the commander isn't actually going to be the most overpowered. Now the reason I say that, infantry are already the absolute meta on the open field. I don't see why we would get more meta infantry commanders who are even stronger. Doesn't really make sense to me to do that. It did for cavalry. Cavalry really needed Arthur Pendragon. I predicted that they'd get a meta commander. Infantry, I think the commander's going to be good, probably worth investing in for newer players. But if you've got Liu Chen, William Wallace, or you've got Scipio and Ragnar, there might be no point in really picking up the commander unless you've got a lot of gold heads to spend or you are a newer player to the game. That would be my main prediction when it comes down to the newer infantry commander. I don't think they're going to be ridiculously meta. It just wouldn't make a lot of sense to me. The next real thing I'd kind of predict when it comes down to infantry, for the open field commander, I think we're going to have a good debuff. The reason I say that, the only real good debuff kind of in the infantry meta right now is probably Scipio Africanus' health reduction. It's absolutely meta, but all the other infantry commanders, they don't really have a debuff. I mean, William's got some cool buffs and stuff. Liu Chair has a debuff, but it's like pretty average. I'm pretty sure it's just a slowing effect, which I mean, it's nice, but it's not overpowered. And Ragnar has a debuff, but it's kind of weird the way it works. It's draining attack and march speed. It's more of a way for him to catch up to units and deal damage to them. It isn't really a crazy debuff that comes on an active skill and makes you deal insane damage. And that's why I want to say next infantry commander could have an interesting debuff. They could again be that primary secondary contrast. Possibly if Lilith goes ridiculous, they could go and do, if the commander is a primary, the commander they're with becomes a smite commander. If the commander is a secondary, they might become a direct damage commander. That would be insane. It would allow you to mix him up. But if this commander, for example, was a primary, maybe they're going to deal a skill damage debuff, very similar to Boudica. And if this commander is a secondary, they might deal a normal damage debuff, so that they're going to take more normal damage, which, while we have, I think, one or two commanders who already do that, I think it would be interesting to give a more meta commander the ability to inflict a normal damage debuff to boost smite commanders. It'd make a lot of sense in my opinion, and it would probably be quite nice on the field. Infantry, they've got decent debuffs, they've got okay amounts of debuffs, but overall I think they could do with a little bit more debuffs. And even in the current meta, I think a lot of marchers could do with a bit more debuffing. I think even archers might get a pretty debuff heavy commander, considering Shajar, not really good at debuffs, Zulang, pretty good debuff, Herming, pretty good debuff, Ashurbanipal, not really. I think that the last release or so, debuffs have been quite average, so we could probably see more debuffs on the infantry march, which is just going to be nice for your mutable. Might get this commander to work a bit more as a support march than just as a DPS commander. And again, I think the debuff could tie in to their active skill being a dual active skill where they can do 2 types of damage, and this commander might actually be able to get benefit from their 2 types. With Shajar and with Arthur, it's kind of just future-proofing. The dual type of damage is kind of useless. Arthur doesn't really have a good combo damage pairing. Shajar doesn't really have a good mighty heal damage pairing. And that's simply because there isn't really many mighty heal commanders. But I think giving a normal damage debuff to infantry would be good for some commanders like Shajar and also like Arthur, because normal damage does boost their types of damage. Especially with Arthur Pendragon, the normal damage factor does boost his combo damage, which is very nice. So when it comes down to it, normal attack is going to be very good for a lot of the current meta commanders, and I think there's a chance we do see some normal attack debuff. Maybe it's a group debuff, maybe it is an AoE effect that's not damage and just puts a debuff. Maybe it's a buff to the march, some type of normal damage onto the march, or some type of skill damage if they're a secondary or primary, depending on how they do it, is certainly possible in my opinion. So overall for the prediction, I predict a dual type commander, a commander who's got ability to do both skill damage and smite damage. I predict some form of a normal damage debuff, most likely single target. There's a possibility of AoE, but most likely single target. And they're going to be an average to slightly meta commander. I don't think we're going to see absolute meta because Infantry have a lot of them right now, but there's a chance we see a commander who's a bit better than CPO and might be a bit of a good investment for a lot of newer players. Chances are quite high in my opinion, and it could be interesting to see. They also could be a really good pairing with William. I forgot to put that in because William, he's really good with Legal Chair, but there are some other smite commanders like Gorgo and CPO who can work well with William, but William is locked up with a lot of people's Legal Chairs. So that does make sense to me, possibly being a good pairing with a Legal Chair or being a good pairing with William, and then you could swap them around. Or it's a good pairing with Legal Chair and you can put William with another march. There's a lot of stuff that could happen if this commander is a decent-ish smite commander. As for the next commander, we're going to get the MGE commander. It's probably going to be a Garrison. The reason I say that, the last release for Infantry was a rally. Generally, we get Garrison Rally, and it's just repeated like that. There's been some rare occasions where we get both at once. For example, I'm pretty sure Gilgamesh and Amanatore released in the exact same cycle, but generally, we don't see that happen. And I think Infantry, they're not in need of a Garrison because Gorgo's still pretty good, but they would benefit from it. Gorgo's good. She's not absolute meta. She could do a little bit better with a slightly stronger Garrison. And I think the Garrison would either be a very good pairing with Gorgo or a really good pairing with Heraclius. Either one is very possible, and it's definitely going to be a counter to the Cavalry Rally, which I don't think is in the game yet. So once the Cav Rally is in the game, we can fully test his kit and stuff. You'd probably see that he's most likely going to be meta dominant, and the Infantry Garrison should act as a counter. Generally, that's what we expect. I think we could see a Smite Garrison just because it'd be really good with Gorgo, and it would still work very well with Heraclius. Smite Garrison most likely is going to happen, in my opinion, because it's just going to counter the new rally quite well. So Smite Garrison, very highly possible, and it's most likely going to be Garrison meta. There hasn't really been a dominant Garrison meta for a while, like ridiculously dominant, to the point of like when Gorgo, when she was first released, or when Zenobia was first released. So this Garrison could be quite meta dominant. We generally see Infantry Garrisons are very, very powerful because they last long, they're tanky, they're annoying to kill, and Gorgo and Heraclius were a really good example of that. Tanky, annoying to kill, it lasts long, and I think that the new Garrison is most likely going to do the same thing and act as a very, very meta counter to a lot of the cavalry marches. And as an added bonus, it's going to absolutely demolish any Arthur Pendragons that try to swarm, because Arthur is one of the worst commanders to swarm a Garrison or a rally with. So overall, I think the next commander for Infantry for the MGE will be a Garrison commander. I doubt it would be a rally. I'd be quite surprised if it was. Most likely with smite damage, which is going to counter the current cavalry rally meta. So now, when do I think we're going to see these commanders release? And I think it's not going to be for a hot minute. And the reason I say that, the Cav Rally isn't even in the game yet. If the new Cavalry Rally was in the game, I'd say that they could be around the corner, the new Infantry. But once the new Cav Rally releases, I'd say it's around a month or two before we see any information, and around 3 months until they're fully in the game. So if the Cav Rally releases around, let's say, February 15th, we could expect to see the new commanders for Infantry around sometime in late May-ish, if I were to give it a guess. So late May, I'd say, is around when we'd see the new Infantry, maybe late April at the earliest. That would be my main assumption. Probably, most likely going to happen around then. I don't see a reason to release them this early. There could be a chance they release even earlier, but I feel like it wouldn't be enough time to fully generate all the stuff they'd want. They want to get some hype behind it. They want to do some leaks. They want to put the commanders in the game physically, and then they've got to do the MGE and the Wheel of Fortune as well. So it can take a lot of time for a commander to be fully released. I'd say late May at the earliest, April, and that would be around your time range. So April to late May would be my time range as an estimate for when I think the next Infantry commanders will be releasing. Now, if you enjoyed today's speculation video, please do consider telling me in the comments, what do you guys think your next commander prediction is? I've had a lot of people give me interesting comments. There's some interesting ones who actually guess which historical figure it might be. I'm not that into the historical part, I just like the damage. But if you really want to talk about the historical figure, I do tend to read every comment at this point a bit slower than I used to, but I do tend to read them, and I will check out your comments. So if I see that you've commented something, I'll most likely give it a heart at some point. So if you want to talk about the upcoming commander release, when you think it may be, which commanders you might think it is, even if you want to guess on which historical figure it is, please do tell me in the comments down below. I find them very interesting, and this video is all speculation, so whatever you say doesn't really need to have any weight behind it. You can just guess whatever you're feeling might be coming into the game, and it could be a very interesting theory. Other than that, I just want to say I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.